Hi, friends. Welcome to the Pain-Free Birth Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Welton, a certified doula, childbirth educator, and mother of three. In this space, we'll hear positive, supernatural, and yes, even pain-free birth stories from women just like you. We'll explore the deeply spiritual side of childbirth and how God designed women's bodies brilliantly for birth. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends, to the Pain-Free Birth Podcast. Today, I am so honored to have Ashleigh Di Lello here as a guest speaker. She is the founder and creator of Bio-Emotional Healing, a revolutionary method based in neuroscience that helps clients around the world break free from emotional trauma, limiting beliefs, anxiety, and chronic pain and illness. And despite being told by doctors that she wouldn't live past her teenage years, she refused to give up, and she discovered the secret to rewiring the mind-body connection. She has become an athlete, TV and Broadway star, entrepreneur, brain coach, and keynote speaker. And today we're honored to have her share here with the Pain for Birth community. And I'm so excited to dive into this, the connection between pain and our brain and how that can even play out in labor. She is just a wealth of knowledge and information. So welcome, Ashleigh.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I first heard you at a conference talking about this subject, and I said, oh my goodness, everything she's saying lines up exactly with what I teach on my accounts and in my courses to my clients, except yours is from a whole different perspective. And your experience with this is truly such a lived experience. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got into this and what happened when you were young that got you into this work?
Yeah. So I've had two life-altering health experiences. And the first one was when I was young, but it was the second one as an adult that then led me to study neuroscience. But my experience when I was younger really laid the foundation for when I first started to understand how intricately connected the mind and body were. But then I didn't understand how that experience had impacted my nervous system until later in my life when I went through my second health experience. So, long story short, I was the epitome of health at age 13. And then overnight, I was fighting for my life. Came out of nowhere, which is very altering on the nervous system. It wasn't anything I could prepare for. It was one day healthy, and the next day literally almost on my deathbed. And that was the beginning of a 4-year journey where I fought between life and death. And the greatest challenge was no one could really figure out what was happening. Now, this was 28 years ago. So you have to understand the world we're living in today didn't exist then. There was no YouTube or podcasts or social media or Google or anything to expose you to different practitioners, different modalities. That was the day of the yellow pages, right? And word of mouth. And so I went to all different types of specialist doctors, hospitals all over the country, had every test you can think of. And they knew I was dying. They knew I had a rare viral infection that my body was fighting, but no one could diagnose it. And essentially, I was sent home to die, saying there's nothing we can do. And we don't even know how to treat it. We don't know what it is. We can see your body shutting down. And I remember one of the most pivotal moments when I was first told this, and it defined my life leading forward, because the doctor came in, and I'm sure you can talk about this, just the difference of environment, right? It was one of those very sterile doctor offices in a hospital with the white walls. There was nothing warm. Everything was cold. I was in one of those paper, robes that used to tear every time you would move,
No.
so you can just, it felt very cold. It felt very sterile and almost ominous, in the energy. And I
Yeah.
remember he came in and rolled one of those stools up to my bed, and he said, "You need to accept you're not going to live past your teenage years." Just
Wow.
flat out like that. Felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Total disbelief of how is this me and my life? Just not too long ago, I was dancing 5 hours a day. My nickname was the Energizer Bunny. And now I'm being told my life is over at 13. And he said, the sooner you accept this, the easier it's going to be to come to terms with your reality.
Mm.
And that gut punch, I remember looking down and really feeling like this was a moment in time where I needed to decide, right? If I was just going to accept what had happened to me or do everything in my power to defy what I'm being told isn't possible. And I probably took the biggest deep breath of my life, which I'm sure you talk about breathing to all the women you go through your course. This was probably the biggest deep breath of my life. And I just looked at him and said, I don't accept this,
Mm.
and we left the hospital, and I credit my mom for giving me that opportunity to speak first. I know she was boiling and wanted to say a lot herself, but she gave me that opportunity, and we left the hospital. I had no idea what I had, how we were even going to overcome it. I got so sick to where there were days I couldn't even lift a finger or speak. Like when I tell you, it's very scary when you can understand the amount of energy it takes to lay still. I used to tell my mom, like, I don't even have the energy to lay here. I had pain in every joint and muscle. My hair was falling out. My skin was yellow from my liver shutting down. I mean, I was dying, and it was clear, and you could see it. And this was when I really started to understand this intricate mind-body connection, because I had nights where I felt so close to my body just giving up that I wouldn't go to sleep. I was so afraid that if I went to bed and surrendered that conscious will to live, that my body just by nature of being so sick and so depleted would just give up. And that fear kept me awake all night, and I would will my body to live. I would will my body to keep fighting. And that served me then. I mean, it helped save my life, because so much of what moved me forward was that determination to live. But it also, as you can imagine, doing that for 4 years really hardwired my nervous system into a fight or flight response at a deep subconscious level of innately not trusting my body, right, to keep me alive. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And as much as we talk about the nervous system now, there was no talk around that 28 years ago, right? Neuroscience has really come in the last just decade of understanding. So it was a long journey. We dove into health practitioners that then were seen as voodoo. You have to understand the time frame, but did everything possible to support my body, my immune system, my mind to fight this virus. And it was a long journey, and piece by piece, slowly healing and getting my strength back and being able to walk from my bedroom to the bathroom to then a few houses down the road. Just such a journey. But it took about 6 years for me to finally reclaim my health enough to go back to life, and back to school. And 6 years was when I went then healthy enough to go back to dancing, which was what I loved since I was a little girl. And I was healthy, now I wanted to seize the day and live life, but I didn't understand then, again, what was running in my nervous system. And so I had a beautiful life, went to college, got my degree. I had a professional dance career on TV and television, which was just so momentous given I was out of dance through all my teenage years. And, it was at the top of the mountain. It's like I did the thing. I overcame, my Goliath, my, life defying impossibilities. I'm at the top of my career, had my daughter, which I was told I would never have, which we can talk about that birth experience, at the top of what felt like just amazing and a miracle. And then I went into a second hip surgery. The first was successful, second hip surgery, and it failed. And
Mm.
it launched my whole body into chronic pain.
Mm.
And just like my first experience, life was great. And then life was totally changed. And that's what this surgery did. And I lost the ability to walk. I had pain, nerve pain throughout my whole body. And it was, again, very deja vu. Like, what is happening? No one could figure it out. I threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. I mean, because now we're living in this day of age of information. I did everything from a holistic, regenerative, functional, Eastern, Western, like whatever you can think about. I was like, I'm going to throw it all at it. Over 200 types of injections. I mean, anything. And I was just getting worse. I was diagnosed with 3, 4 different pain conditions that you're told you'll have the rest of your life. And after about 2.5 years of doing all of this and getting worse, I really had, again, a very defining moment where one night I was like, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this, live in this relentless pain. I was sleeping maybe 2 to 3 hours a night. I had a daughter that this all started when she was 2. So now she was 4. At that time, I couldn't lift her. I couldn't like get on the ground and play with her. I'd waited my whole life to have this child, and now I can't take care of her. Right? My family was about to lose our home because we were spending everything you can think of trying to get me well, which insurance never covers. It was just this, it seemed like how is this ever going to change or get better? And it wasn't just
Mm,
my pain, it was what it was doing to my family. And the reason why that night was so scary is I was talking to my husband and I said, there's nothing left to try. Like there's literally nothing left to try. We have tried everything that exists on all spectrums. And so I really was feeling defeated. What else can I do? And then I remember that night, I think it was like 2:33 in the morning. I was laying on my bedroom floor in my fetal position, which was a go-to place when it went in so much pain. And I just had this thought come in. Well, one thing they're all telling me, the doctors, the specialists, everyone, is your nervous system flipped a switch into pain. And that can happen sometimes, right? And I'm just being told, well, that can happen sometimes in surgery or after a big event.
mm,
And I had this thought come in, well, if it can flip into pain, I'm going to figure out how to flip it back.
yeah.
And that was when I dove deep into neuroscience and studying the brain and pain science. And what I realized is there was no process. Like, what is the process to rewire your nervous system out of pain, but really out of stress? Because for some
Mhm.
people, it shows up in physical pain, autoimmune issues. For other people, a nervous system and stress shows up in anxiety, depression, trauma, right? It comes in all different forms. Mine really manifested in physical pain, but you can believe I had unresolved PTSD around my body. Absolutely, with everything I'd gone through. I had health anxiety over, of course, my body and symptoms and pain because of what I'd been through. And that's when I decided I'm going to create this to save my own life. And I created bioemotional healing, which is this process based in neuroscience to rewire the nervous system out of stress, out of pain, out of physical, mental, emotional pain. And that's what I've been doing for the last 5.5 years with clients all
Wow,
over the world.
that's fascinating. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's true. Like some of our greatest work comes from our own struggles and pain and likewise with me, I created the course I wish I had when I was pregnant for the first
Yes.
time. It's like this doesn't exist. Who's talking about this? How do we make this process teachable, and how do we share it with other people? And I love the beauty of that, because what you went through, all those years of pain and suffering, you said, I'm not going to make this, you know, this healing that you discovered isn't just for you. You can share it with the world now. And I think that's just so beautiful and such an amazing redemption. I'm curious, was the hip pain, the hip surgeries you had, was that connected to the viral infection, or was that from something else?
So that was connected to my professional dance career.
Okay.
So, and part genetic. I was born with my femoral head, right? My femoral heads were misshapen, so there was extra bone. I didn't know that. It's not like you have a baby and put them in an MRI machine, right, to see what their
Yeah.
hip
Yeah.
bones look like. But so you add that with the volume of dancing that I did and my professional career, and then especially my husband and I were on So You Think You Can Dance, which we ended up going to the finale. So we were dancing like 12 hours a day. And then we went to Broadway 8 shows a week. And so it was a lot of wear and tear. The type of surgeries I needed are usually from wear and tear plus the genetics. So that's why I knew when I had my first hip surgery, it was probably inevitable I'd have to have a second one on the left hip. But the right hip was successful. I went back to my career after 8 months. And then the left one had a whole different story and
Wow.
experience that was very unexpected.
Yeah. So all of a
I,
sudden you couldn't recover. You were in bed in pain, and it flipped a switch in your nervous system that created lots of chronic pain.
yeah, I knew right away something was different. I could tell, and I was very in tune with my body from my whole illness, but also having already gone through a hip surgery. So you're like, okay, I know what this should generally look like and feel like. And it's a really tough recovery, learning how to walk again, getting off the crutches. It's obviously not pain-free in terms of having a major
Yeah.
surgery in your biggest joint in your body,
Mm.
but it was very different. And there was other pains and symptoms. And then as I tried to start to walk again, that's when all hell broke loose. And it was like
Mm.
waking up each day with new pain somewhere else, new dysfunction, all the way up my whole spine into my neck, down my shoulder. I got to where I couldn't even hold a book without nerve pain,
Mm.
just going crazy through my whole arm. Couldn't walk. No matter my attempts and with rehab, I couldn't. It was this just crazy. How does one surgery take someone at that point? I was the strongest, healthiest, fittest of my entire life to then like, what happened? Now I can't walk. I can't hold a book. I have nerve pain
Wow.
everywhere. And then, of course, that led to more health challenges because I'm in such debilitating pain. I'm not sleeping. The body is really breaking down. And it was a nightmare that led me to such desperation, that led me to my work, which now I'm so grateful for, but certainly would never want to live again.
Yeah. And you obviously knew, like, I recovered from the first surgery on one side. Why is this one why am I not recovering? Why am I getting all these new pains? So, how long was that journey and what did you discover in that journey?
Yeah. So one thing that's important is, there was a physical thing that we later found out that the surgeon left a hole in my hip capsule, actually. And my psoas was actually going inside my hip capsule. Your biggest hip flexor muscle is, that's very important to walking and everything else, which wasn't visible in an MRI. So there was this surgery did fail. It left me in a very vulnerable position, which my brain knew, like I can't walk. There's a hole here, right? It's throwing off your entire dynamic of your body, which is why my spine ended up curving, because my body was trying to compensate for its base being totally obliterated, right? And unable to
Wow.
function. So that happened, but I didn't know about that hole until 3.5 years later. But the way my body reacted to it is because of my history. So
Yeah.
anyone's body would have a hard time with having a hole left, and it would send off alarm bells because it's trying to tell you something is wrong, right? And that is when pain is very protective. Pain
Yes.
is a signal that the
Yes.
body's trying to communicate to you. It's the number one protective mechanism in the nervous
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
right?
There's something
And
wrong. Get to
there's
say,
something wrong,
yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
in that, it's a beautiful mechanism, right? Pain gets a bad rap, and I certainly have felt the worst of it, but it's a protective mechanism which saves our life. It
Yes.
teaches us, hey, if you jump off this 30 foot and just land on straight legs, you're gonna get hurt, right? It
Yeah.
teaches us something's wrong in the body,
Yeah.
pay
Take your
attention.
hand off the stove. Like,
That's
that's
right.
dangerous. That's what I say
That,
is, like, pain isn't good or bad. It's a message. It's our job to
absolutely.
interpret that message.
Absolutely. And the challenges throughout your life, based on the experiences you've had in your life and the severity of them or how much they altered you, pain can and very well does become a protective, hyper protective messaging system, right? And truthfully, anxiety is the same way. So
Mm.
they're signals of something is off, right? So with what I went through when I was younger and literally living between life and death for 4 years and defying odds. So I wasn't even given a chance. It was this constant self-driven, somehow I'm going to overcome this. I mean, it was the epitome of really teaching my nervous system to not trust my body and to live in fight or flight. So that didn't just go away when I survived because my nervous system had learned that through my entire teenage years.
Yeah.
And it was constantly running. And I really believe it's a reason why we can talk about my birth story, that why, it was
Yeah.
more challenging. And throughout my whole professional career, I was getting injured all the time,
Mm.
notwithstanding how on point my nutrition was and my training and my cool down. And I was doing ice baths then and my warm up. It was like I was constantly getting injured because unknowingly to me, my body was constantly running that hypervigilance, overprotection. where's the next threat? We could die again. We got to be on alert. So when that hip surgery
Yes.
failed and there was a real physical failing that my brain was aware of, my nervous system, my brain went into an overdrive fight or
Yeah.
flight response
Yeah.
because it wasn't just the hip surgery, it was the cross reference
Mhm.
of what had happened in my past. And we need to protect you. We are not going to die again, right? And literally it's not logical. It's just all emotional. It's all limbic brain, which also doesn't have a time clock. And that's really important for people to
Yeah.
understand. So we can consciously decipher what pain means. And for a lot of people, that's enough. It's a redirection of, hey, pain is a signal. Of course, my body's doing something really significant here, bringing this baby. Pain is one way in which it's going to say, oh my gosh, look what we're doing. Look what you're asking the body to do. And conscious redirection can absolutely be enough there because everything to the brain comes down to meaning. But for some people, including my body, there was a deep subconscious meaning that had been wired in every cell, tissue, and the deep memories of my limbic system. So that when that surgery happened and failed, the meaning was alarm, alarm, we could die again. We need to send protective signals, not just, hey, something's wrong with your hip. It's like the whole body went on fire because that was the nerve pain. Because my brain, the limbic system, where all your emotional memories and stresses are stored, doesn't have a time clock.
Yeah.
It's not deciphering past from present. In fact, it's cross-referencing them as if they're both happening in the same time. And that's where my nervous system went into overdrive, which manifested in pain everywhere. And then because the pain receptors in the brain, the more they fire, the stronger they get. So pain starts to get bigger, need less of a stimulus. Those pain receptors also get less specific. And so they start sending pain to other areas. And that's why pain spreads.
Mm.
And then living that way just continues to rewire it and
So
make
you're
it
getting
all
more
the
and
more
more
solid.
sensitized or
Exactly.
sensitive, I should say, to pain and more easy to experience pain and more easily triggered. And every little injury, something that might not injure another dancer, is going to injure you and take you out for a week or a month.
Absolutely.
So, how did this affect your birth? I'm really curious because I feel like this could be very relatable to many women.
Yeah. And again, when I had my daughter, I didn't know anything about this yet, right? This
Right.
started 2 years after she was born, but I did know how powerful the mind body connection was, right? I had overcome my illness. So, and I was told I'd never have children. So
Mm.
she just felt like this miracle baby because through
They
all
just
my
gave you
illness,
all the fun diagnoses.
oh,
Like, you're
I,
just going to die and never have kids
do
and
you know
forget
what
living.
I didn't even finish that, but he actually did go through the list. He was like, you're never going to dance again. And at that time I was dancing 5, 6 hours a day. That was the love of my life. You're
Wow.
never going to get married. You're never going to have children. Like literally,
What?
it's mind boggling when you really think about it.
Ugh.
And
That
they
makes me
sent in,
angry. Like, he
I
doesn't
know,
even have a right to say whether they're going to get married or not. Like, that's so out of his
I know.
scope. Oh my gosh.
And I lecture to doctors and neuroscientists and pain scientists now, and I'm like, listen, I get it. And my sister's a surgeon,
Yeah.
I have medical doctors throughout my family, and I'm like, listen,
Mm.
I get that you need to sometimes say, hey, this is what we're facing,
Yeah, they're
right?
trying to help you face reality.
This is huge, and these are where we have limits or where we can help. That's very different than saying this is exactly what's going to happen and nothing else,
Yeah.
and not leaving any room and for something different, because history has continued to show like impossible isn't a fact, it's an opinion, and people
Mhm.
defy the odds all of the time. In fact, in the medical world, all really new drugs and surgeries are based on the placebo effect, like seeing how powerful someone's belief is in creating an
Yes.
outcome, right? They give a sugar pill and they have the same outcome as someone who's given an actual drug because they believe this pill is going to create this outcome. So therefore it does,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
The mind body connection has been proven millions of times in every medical study.
That's right. That's right. In fact, even when it comes to pain, they've done studies where they'll give someone in a lot of pain, like morphine, they'll tell them, and literally within a few minutes, they're like, oh my gosh, man, this feels so much better. Or they'll give actually something via a pill. So not through the veins, because we know that takes care of pain faster, but they'll give them a pill. And people will start saying within 5 minutes, like, oh my gosh, my pain feels so much better. Well, that medication has not even been broken down yet and
Right, right.
distributed through the bloodstream. So, but it's the belief, I'll take this, my pain will get less. And the brain, which is its own pharmacy, starts to send signals to reduce the pain, not the medication, which again tells us how powerful beliefs are and meaning is, right?
Mm,
Around anything, we're dictating to the brain what it should and can experience. And
yeah.
that's what I said to the psychologist that came into me at 13 to help me come to terms with my reality. And I remember telling her, listen, I know I'm dying. I can feel it. I'm terrified. I can feel it. And I also feel deep in my soul, if I just accept this, then any chance of surviving is gone. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not just accepting this at age 13. I don't know how, but I feel deep in my soul, I'm meant to live a longer life.
Mm.
And so no matter what I'm facing or the odds, I'm going to approach this of not trying to not die, but to actually, in fact, live.
What a courageous thing for a 13-year-old girl to say to like experienced professional doctors and psychologists. Like, I'm just kind of in awe of you that at that age you had that courage, because even adults now struggle to speak up for themselves among experts and medical professionals, whether we're talking maternity care or really any field of medicine. It's like the doctor's word is God, and to believe contrary is very anti-cultural these days. But as a 13-year-old girl, nonetheless, like, wow, that's amazing.
You know, it's interesting because looking back now as an adult, and all I know is I'm grateful I was born just very determined in life. I started dancing 5 hours a day at age 7. I think that really helped to build a sense of determination and dedication. And I had such a deep love for life. And I felt such a purpose of, I don't know what it was,
Yeah,
just
I
since
was
I
going
was
to
young.
ask, did you feel like you had a higher purpose or call at that age?
I did. I really did. I remember even saying to my mom, and I have a deep faith, and that also helped serve me. I felt like God didn't just send me here to die at 13. I felt there was more to my life, and that was also a big driving force of
Yeah.
being able to courageously, yes, look at someone that I respect their knowledge and expertise, and nobody gets to put the final limitations on my life but
Yeah.
me, right? So i can
Yes.
i can absolutely respect you and listen to you and understand that you have knowledge and know that I have final stewardship over my life and my body and what I choose, and no one else can know all of that because they don't live inside my mind and body. They don't live
Yes.
inside that intuition. They don't
Mm-hmm.
live inside that belief. And it didn't make sense to anyone else, but I could feel this deep belief like, no, I'm not meant to die. Like as long as it takes, I'm not meant to. And so I'm not going to lean into that. I'm going to lean into the possibility of something greater. And I think it was just, we see throughout history when people's life is on the line, it's amazing what we can stand up for or fight for and overcome and be courageous in. And it literally was, that was my moment. That was where my life was on the line and I had to decide. And I think that's where, I always say at 13, I grew up like overnight because I had to
Mm-hmm.
grow up to be able to handle the complexity of that. And it was just literally because my life was on the line, I was able to access deeper reserves and courage because the stakes were so
Wow.
high, and I'm sure you talk about that, and mothers do that all the time when they give birth, and
Yes, they have
it's
to
because
trust
they have
themselves,
to.
because
Yeah.
otherwise it's like if you just take every diagnosis or ultimatum a doctor gives you, like, it's never the last word. What you're saying is so powerful. It reminds me of this story I saw online recently. It was like an experiment they did with rats where they put them in jars of water and they had to swim to stay afloat. Otherwise they would drown. And they were timing how long they did this experiment for. Now it's kind of a cruel experiment, but it was fascinating at the same time. And they found that they timed it to about 3 hours, I think, was the first instance where these rats would finally give up out of exhaustion and then drown. And just as they were drowning, they would pull them out of the water, and then I think they'd give them a little break. Then they would do the experiment again the next day or a little bit later, and they were timing it again to see how long can these rats tread water before drowning. And they, like, 3 hours passed, then 4, then 5, and the scientists were like amazed. Then it's like 10, 20 hours. They went to 60 hours, I think it was, but it was like multiple times, like something like 60 hours before finally giving up in exhaustion, because in their brain they had this belief that, well, at some point someone's going to pick me up out of this water from drowning, so I have to keep going.
Right. 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 Yeah. It's so fascinating to the belief of this is possible. Like, I can do this. I can
Yes.
do this for another moment. And that's where so much of anything in life, the brain will always make it bigger and more overwhelming, because the brain always seeks familiarity and, quote,
Yeah,
safety, right?
it's
Which is
trying to
what it
protect
knows,
us.
trying
Yeah.
to protect us to what it knows, even if that is hell, even if it's pain, even if it's anxiety, even if it's trauma. It's like, I've adapted to this. This is familiar now. I want to keep it here. But when there's this belief of possibility, right, which is what these rats demonstrate, that I can do this because I'm going to be rescued. So it's possible to keep going,
Yeah.
versus beforehand, when we let go of that possibility, I can't do this anymore, no one's coming to help me or save me, or I can't do this any longer, well, then we give up, right? And
Yeah.
that shows to how powerful that belief was. And that's why I would stay up at night, because there was this just belief that if I kept going and we kept doing all the pieces, that somehow, some way, my body was going to be able to overcome this. And I know that for women, as we go into birth, and there's so many scary things about it and projected about it, but
Yeah.
it's rooted, I'm sure you talk about in depth, this belief that the body was meant to obviously do this and bring life. And it's an
Yeah.
inherent trust in that, versus, oh my gosh, it's me and my body. All these things could go wrong. It could fail me. That's a
Yeah.
totally different experience and meaning, that the brain's either going to lean into trust and surrender, or fear and protection and lock up and create
Yes.
more alarm signals. And that really is the power of meaning and belief, right?
Absolutely. And in your birth experience, you said that you were contracting and contracting, but never dilating. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, at the time, of course, I didn't know, but afterwards, right, when I started studying the
Yeah.
nervous system, like you and I were talking before, I wasn't afraid of birth, right? That because my body had already
Been through
gone to
so
hell and
much.
back,
Yeah.
right? And I
Your
really
pain
was
tolerance is high.
yeah, yes, it was. It really, it was. So I wasn't afraid of the discomfort of birth, right?
Yes.
There's a little bit of like, I've never done this before, So with anyone, there's a little bit of uncertainty of,
Yeah.
how
Of
is
the
this going
fear
to
of the
look for
unknown.
me? What does this look like to push this baby out of this little hole?
Oh,
And
sure. Yes.
and then people also like to tell you horrible
Horror
stories. I
stories.
don't I don't get it, they do. And so, I mean, I think anyone, to be human, has a little bit of like trepidation, but I also trusted my body in a certain degree. We had overcome something that I felt like couldn't get worse than that. So,
And you're doing what the doctor said you'll never do, which in itself
yes.
is a miracle. So you probably had a bit of courage and confidence there. Like, hey, they said I'd never live. I'd never get pregnant. Here I am. I'm going to have this baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was excited. I'm like, my body can do this. And I felt, even just as a dancer, I'm like, I'm connected to my pelvic floor muscles. So I know how to utilize them, relax them, activate them. And my body was kind of sensitive after everything I'd gone through. So I was also not wanting to just bring drugs in, even from a perspective of wanting to be present and to give my body the best chance. But also, with everything I'd gone through, I wanted to be in a hospital, but I had talked to my doctor about, I want to try to do this. There was a tub in my room and all of the things. So for 14 hours, I was up and moving around, and I was bouncing on the ball, and, I was breathing, and my contractions were like 15 seconds apart, and I had dilated in 15 hours to 2.5. And my daughter's head was it turned up. So I was feeling it a lot in my spine, right? Every time I was getting just
Posterior. Yeah.
spinal contractions so bad. 14 hours, a lot of pressure on her. I wasn't progressing. At one point, 3 nurses come running in because her heart rate is plummeting, which even at that moment, I'm like, cut her out. I don't know, like whatever you need to do for my baby, because I also, as mothers are, they're, in those moments, you'll do whatever it takes for your baby. So with the stress on her heart and everything, and they're like, your body's not relaxing, even though I was doing all the things, right, to get it to relax. So we did a minor, like just drug cocktail to try it because I didn't want to go full. I was like, let's just see if this helps. Still went dilate, ended up having to have an epidural to help it relax. Still took all the way up to over 24 hours and then an hour and a half of pushing. It was just this crazy where my body would not relax to dilate. It took all those other pieces. I'm still pushing her. My doctor at that point is like, we're going to have to do a C-section. I'm like, 26 hours, let me get her out. And I was like, give me
and you had
one more
progressed
push.
to 10 centimeters.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, give me one more push, and my mom's like, people down the hall could hear you, right? Again,
let this be a lesson. Don't ever doubt Ashleigh. She will prove you wrong.
Right. It's very
it's
true.
Really all you needed was for the doctor to say, okay, we're going to do a cesarean. Okay, I'm pushing her out.
It was like, one more push at this point at 26 hours. She came shotting out. I mean, I ripped. It wasn't ideal.
I bet you did. Yeah.
But as we were looking back, right, I'm like, man, why wouldn't my body relax? I felt empowered. I wasn't in fear, right? I was moving. I was doing all the things. I had a healthy pregnancy. I mean, I had challenges, but I was healthy. I had moved and worked my body. But as I studied the nervous system several years later, again, realizing that when it came to my body, there was a very hardwired fight or flight response. So again, going into labor from that perspective is very protective from me and my body, right? This is a huge thing the body is doing. Are we safe to do this? I'd also already had one hip surgery, so we had to take things in precaution to not, irritate the hip that had already been surgically repaired. And again, that fight or flight hyperprotective response was triggered, which I absolutely believe is what leaned it into at a subconscious level, even in my nervous system, fear and mistrust versus surrendering and trusting. Even though I wasn't consciously there. That's how powerful the nervous system is in our life experiences and how the subconscious mind is shaped, which is why I help people, because it's not always conscious,
right. It usually isn't. The trauma
usually isn't,
is stored, but it's not, you're not aware of it with your, conscious brain.
Right. At a deep level, which is why people try to do all these things to change their pain or their anxiety or their trauma, and they just can't because the answer isn't in the conscious, logical thinking brain. And so I really believe, again, just like after the hip surgery, those deep protective alarm bells were activated when I was giving birth, because it was my body, and it's a quote threat to the body if seen from that protective lens. And I really believe
comes up.
I really believe that's what was happening, to which then my body wouldn't relax. It was ready to
tense.
fight.
And when that happens and your body is tense and tight, it kind of holds that baby up. There's other factors too, as you tell your story, that I'm like, oh, this could have also played a role. For example, like if baby's posterior, they're not able to engage in the pelvis, and that prevents dilation from happening if they haven't descended yet to engage in the pelvis. And in many cases as well, like athletes tend to have very tense pelvic floors just because of all the training that you do. And then the hip surgery could have also impacted the shape of your pelvic floor and what space the baby's fitting in. And if that baby's head is turned or facing posterior, all of those biomechanics of labor and the pelvic floor can really impact labor as well. In addition to the psychological, like limbic system, somatic response of tension in the body. And then you've got all this stuff going on. Well, it's no wonder you're stuck at 2.5 centimeters for 16 hours. Like that baby's not moving, but it's amazing that you did progress to 10 and then still were able to push her out, because I think in most situations that would have led to a cesarean or something. But certainly it's really interesting to reflect back, because
Yeah.
I love to dissect births and go, oh, what was going on under the surface there? Like, how can we understand this better? And you're right, there's layers to it. It's myofascial, it's subconscious beliefs, it's the nervous system beliefs, it's the trauma
Mm-hmm.
stored in our body. It's so many different things, and it all makes logical sense if once we have all these pieces.
Right. And it's interesting because I had to do pelvic rehab because then after my failed hip surgery, I was like, one of the things I was diagnosed with was interstitial cystitis, bladder pelvic pain. And I did realize what you just said. Like I had been holding my pelvic floor in tension since I was 7. Because that's what you
Wow.
do when you dance. You hold your core in
Yes.
tight to be able to have balance, to
Yeah.
be able to have posture. And while you think, man, my pelvic floor is strong, it's like it has been held in tension like almost my
Yes.
whole life, not being able to actually relax, because to relax in your core as a dancer throws you off balance, doesn't give you
Mm,
control. And
very
so it was such
interesting.
an
Yeah.
interesting thing to be able to access that when needed and learn how to relax that the rest of my day, right? When I'm not working out or
Yeah.
not dancing, like we don't have to hold that in tension. So you're right. It's interesting. I thought that would help me, but I didn't understand at the time that that actually, like you said, with athletes was setting me
Yeah,
up
it
to have
can actually
a
go
harder
against
time.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think Kegels are necessarily good for everyone, because the goal isn't to have a strong pelvic floor. Now we want a strong pelvic floor to keep baby in for 9 months, right? That's why we have that thick cervix and all of that protective tissue there. But in labor, it doesn't serve us, because the job of the pelvic floor is to thin and yield, not to
Mhm.
be strong. And if it's strong and tense, that baby can't get through. We need it
Yeah.
to move out of the way and yield to the contractions and yield to baby's head engaging. So that totally makes sense. And then you have the subconscious tension, you've got the tension that's your pelvic floor is already strong and tight. And then if it's in a funky position and baby's in a funky position, like all these things compound in labor. And I think in many cases, when we have interventions in labor or labor doesn't go the way we expect, you often see this kind of perfect storm where there's biomechanical issues and fear and tension. And sometimes one comes first or the other,
Right.
but they usually feed each other. And then you get
Sure.
into a position where baby's just stuck and
Yeah.
everything's tight and in pain, and it spirals, and we need interventions. And that's why interventions are, I'm so thankful for them, because truly some women really do need them for many reasons. And
Right.
in your case, you kind of pushed through, literally pushed her out.
It's a part of my personality,
For
obviously,
better
a
or
little
worse,
bit,
right, right.
and I would have done whatever we needed to do, like
Yes,
all
right. We
moms
all
do.
moms do, yeah.
All moms do. It's amazing. It is so commendable. Like I said, when her heart rate jumped, I was like, cut me open right here, get her out.
Yeah.
But again, in that moment, I felt like, again, this is trusting yourself. I'm like, she's there. I could see her head, I was watching in a mirror because so I could see my progress. And I'm like, give me one
She's
more push.
okay.
Just
Yeah,
give
she's okay.
me
Yeah,
one more.
if
And
you're that close, babies are very resilient in that stage, and there's a lot of freaking out that happens, but actually dips in heart rates are actually very physiological. They're prepared for that because of the pressure that they're actually, it's okay when they lose that oxygen and there's a reserve. There's some really fascinating physiological facts about that it's actually very normal in that stage, particularly that stage of labor at the end, to have more of those decelerations. But as long as they're recovering okay,
right,
it's okay.
right.
But unfortunately, a lot of doctors get really scared.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to something we said, and I'm sure you talk about it a lot. Obviously, we were designed to be able to
Yeah,
do this,
yeah.
So as we see, there's just so much beautiful divine innate intelligence, both in the female body and in the babies, to be able to tolerate to a certain degree, right? The pressures. And obviously, I won't probably ever experience it again, but I know it would be a very different experience this time around. Now I've had 3 hip surgeries, but my nervous system is
Wow.
in such a different place, and the
Yeah.
tension in my pelvic floor
Yeah.
and
You've trained your nervous
all of
system
that's,
differently.
but it's interesting to reflect and back. And like you said, yes, all these different pieces.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what are some tips you could share with women on this pain mind connection, mind body connection, and how the brain can really control, or in a sense, at least influence the pain we're experiencing? And what have you learned just in general that also could apply to women listening to this?
Absolutely. And I just want to say some women might be like, maybe they're not as afraid of the pain, but they have anxieties over even the labor itself or
Yeah.
even what comes after. And what I will say is, no system in the body breaks down alone or heals alone. So whether you have more sensitivity to pain or sensitivity to fear and anxiety, fear fuels pain, right? And vice versa. So
Yeah.
let's say you do all the other pieces, but you still have a lot of fear and anxiety, that the brain, we know the same areas of the brain are activated by both physical stress and emotional and mental stress. So in saying that, there could be not much physiologically happening, but if there's a lot of fear, anxiety, that's going to drive the brain's threat centers up, which means it's going to amplify pain, not because physically it needs to, but because those same areas of the brain are being activated emotionally, which then sends a physical signal. So I just want people to understand that, because we've also been programmed to think pain is an indication of something wrong. And yes, it is in many cases, but it also is just an indication of alarm bells going off, which can be caused from physical, but also from meanings that are coming
Yeah.
from the emotions or your mind, right? And so
Yes.
that's really important to understand. And neuroscience has now shown we have to see pain through a biopsychosocial lens, which means taking every aspect of what is us, because the brain looks at all of that to decide how much pain to create and when, which is why it's so complex, because it's so much more than just a signal of something physically happening
Right.
in the body, which is why women have so much more pain diagnoses and conditions than men, because so much is fueled from emotions and from past traumas or past abuses
Mm.
that get stored in the body, that then even 10 years later, 20 years later, or they go through some experience, those protective signals in the brain get pushed into haywire, and then pain. Because why are women so much more diagnosed with fibromyalgia and other pain conditions? And now we are making the connection of seeing how much prevalent previous challenges, challenging childhood, traumas, something like me going through an illness, something that was really altering, then later in life show up in pain.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And
such,
and
yeah.
it's not fair, right?
Right.
Like it ticked me off when I realized all this. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I already went through my illness. Now you're telling me that changed my nervous system to now where I can't just heal it physically. Like I have to truly change my brain. And so in that, I just want people to understand those alarm bells have gone off, which is why the pain is worse or the anxiety or anything else. But that also means you can change. We're not just stuck because of what's happened to us. So the reason why I'm emphasizing this first is that awareness is the foundation of changing it. You have to first shift the paradigm of, okay, pain isn't just a signal of something wrong in the body. Anxiety or depression or whatever isn't just a signal of something wrong in my mind that I can't change.
Yes.
It's my nervous system is sending off alarm bells. This is manifesting in these symptoms. Why? Let's dive in and seek to understand what is happening that is triggering, past beliefs or past pain, like emotional or physical pain,
Mm-hmm.
past trauma, right? And trauma is anything that alters the brain. So that's just
Mm.
important, because we always talk about trauma and people are like, I had a good childhood. Well, that's great. It's not always something from your childhood. You could have just then gone through something significant when you were 25 that from that moment, your life changed. How you saw things changed. You once felt secure and now you fear more, right? Like it's anything that alters the brain, that then going through something like getting pregnant and bringing a life into this world, that's a huge change. That's a huge change. And in that, sometimes depending on the situation and your fear around it or complications, that can trigger those deep protective mechanisms of the brain to make the experience more challenging or the birth even more challenging. And just understanding that none of us are broken or damaged beyond repair, but these signals, whether that came up more physically or more mentally and emotionally, are really protective. And it's the brain and the body trying to get your attention, that there's stuff to look at and work through and process and reframe, because it's been storing it. It's been storing the impact of it. And when we can start to just give ourselves that grace and compassion of it's not just us, what's wrong with us, but it's our brain and nervous system, then we can start to be open to change it. So that I just wanted to lay that foundation, because we can't change it until we really are aware and accept that impact of our life on us and how the brain seeks to protect us.
Yes. And I love that you're saying we can change it. And that is really controversial and offensive to many people. I realize,
I know.
and I'm sure you get the same reactions I get when I say birth doesn't have to be painful. And they're like, of course it is. Mine was painful. That means
yes,
everyone's is painful. And I'm going to die on this hill because that's my experience and it reinforces my belief. And you're challenging my belief. And what you're saying essentially is that pain is not just physical. It's not just a nerve firing. It's our response to it. It's the meaning we associate to it. And in that, either it's going to magnify it or depress it.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's essentially what I teach, is learning how to reframe the meaning of pain so that it no longer even fires, you don't even feel it. And in your case, how do you reframe that pain and retrain your nervous system so that it doesn't need to feel it? Because sometimes it's just on a loop and it's not even
always.
Yeah.
Once pain has been, so there's a difference between acute pain, right? Like in this moment, I'm having pain, but it's going to go away, right? Or I had an injury that created pain, but it's going to go away, right? I sprained an ankle. But once pain has been present for over 6 months, it's now defined as chronic. And at that point, it's not just a physical issue, it's a brain issue. At that point, after 6 months, those pain receptors have gotten larger, stronger, more sensitive, less specific. And that's why we're approaching chronic pain from such a wrong perspective. We have to treat the brain. All pain comes from the brain. The brain decides if it exists and how much. And with that, I think this is where people get defensive, because it's not a personal attack, right? Like there was nothing I did to end up in chronic pain, but there was life experiences that happened that altered my nervous system and my brain at a deep level in a way I didn't understand, that then compounded to altering. And now I was stuck in this pattern. My brain, not me, my brain was stuck in this pattern of pain and protection. I had to take responsibility to then fix it, right? We don't know what we don't know. And that's like where if women had a painful birth, well, so did I. Like I told you, I'd love to have not, but I didn't know any different. And the point is as we know better, we get to do better. And so as ticked off as I was, like I had to figure this out. I had to change my whole nervous system, like rewire it from its fundamental wiring. And let me tell you again, to take any shame off, my brain was absolutely resistant. I would try to say, we don't need to run all these protection signals. And it's like, yes, you do. Remember, you almost died for 4 years.
Yeah, that's a strong protection signal.
What are you doing? I'm protecting you, right? And for some people, it's like, what are you doing? Remember that trauma? Remember that abuse? Remember, no, I'm not going to take my shield down. Are you kidding me? I'm putting these babies up so I keep you safe from something similar. And that's where I want people to understand it is not a shame thing. And for some people, it's enough to just redirect. And for others, the deeper work of changing their nervous system has to happen because
Yes.
they've had different life experiences,
Yeah.
right? That have shaped their nervous system in a way that
Yeah.
now the brain is the only self-operating organism, like
Yeah.
organ in the body, right? So it's like, thank you, but I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where the brain can be such a powerful player, notwithstanding your efforts. And that's where I'm saying it's not you, it's your brain, but it's you who's going to help shift it and
Yeah,
change
you're in the
it.
driver's seat of your
Yeah,
brain and you get to show it. Okay, brain, I know you're taking me down this path, but we're going to turn left here this time. I'm in
right.
the driver's seat and now we're going to go this way. We're going to go a different path. And when you were saying it, I almost felt like an unraveling, like that some women's brains or people, but we're talking to women here primarily, through trauma, through our life experiences, having been trained into experiencing pain or depression or anxiety or
Yeah,
whatever that chronic thing is, there has to be an unraveling that happens
absolutely.
of that nervous system and of the trauma and of the pain. And that takes a deep work. And that's oftentimes the work I work with clients in preparing for birth, because some women just get it and they're like, got it, I'm going to have a pain-free birth, I'm in charge, I can control my brain, my thoughts, and they do it. Watch a couple of my reels or my masterclass and they're like, okay, I had a pain-free birth, don't even take my course. Others need the deep unraveling because there's stored traumas, there's deep set mindsets and beliefs surrounding birth or motherhood even, and
Mhm.
all of that comes up and impacts our brain in labor. And what I tell women, like, in
Absolutely.
labor, whatever's inside you is going to get squeezed out. It's going to come to the surface, all those subconscious fears, all those patterns and belief systems and coping behaviors, like it all rises to the surface. And I think that's why pregnancy is so hard in some ways, because our body is actually bringing that up throughout pregnancy, because it's like, hey, we can't really deal with this in labor when we're trying to push a baby out. So we're going to just, our hormones are going to like elevate and we're going to make you super emotional so that you feel all this now and so
Yeah.
you can heal it.
Right.
It's
You
like,
know,
wait a second, there's a purpose to that too.
the body is amazing. That's where I'm
Right?
saying,
It's
I tell my
brilliant.
clients we're really programmed throughout life to feel it's us versus our body. You know,
Yes.
both from a
So true.
symptom standpoint, but also from an aesthetic standpoint. It's like our bodies are
Mm,
here to let us down
yeah.
versus, man, our bodies are our greatest asset. They're the reason we're living,
Yes.
and they're always trying to communicate to us, always.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
we learn to listen and actually have a relationship of listening, then it shifts everything. It shifts how we think and feel and act, like physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's our home. It's with us always. And that's such an important shift of also learning to trust your intuition versus, I'm living in this body I can't trust. It's not safe. It's here to fight me, let me down, betray me, which I certainly felt for a lot of my life. Like, I'll
Yeah.
just be honest, because that was what my life
It's
felt
like
like.
you're
Like,
at
right.
odds with your body. Like your body's trying to kill you. It's actually trying to keep you from dying,
That's
but
exactly
it
right.
was
It
actually
was a
killing you.
That's right. And that was such a huge shift where I'm not fighting my body to live. Me and my body are fighting this virus to live
Yeah.
together. And that's like, I'm not fighting my body to withstand this labor. I'm not fighting my brain with this anxiety. It's like,
Right.
what is the messaging it's trying to tell me? And if I start
Yes.
listening and dive into the deeper work to unlearn, like I always tell my clients, with the nervous system, people talk a lot about rewiring it, but it will not be receptive to a new program until it unlearns the old.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, thank you. But remember, I'm doing this. And like my brain was like, I'm not going to change this. Look at, you defied the odds. We survived. Why would we let this go? Right.
Right. Like,
And
I learned how to survive. I'm going to stay in survival mode.
that's right. And to be fair, I'm like, you're right. Like my brain, I could not redirect it just consciously. My brain was like, listen, we defied the odds, Ashleigh. I'm not turning this off.
Mm.
This saved your life. And such an
Some
unraveling was,
deep
I get
programming.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thank you from the depths of my soul. And I'm not there anymore. And it's no longer serving me. It is hurting me and it is holding me in chronic pain now. So thank you. And that's our part, because the brain doesn't have that time clock in the limbic system of saying, thank you. That survival mechanism served me brilliantly at that time
Yes.
in my life. Thank you. I honor it and I appreciate it. And now it's time to let it go and know that if it ever really needs to be triggered again, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
It's built in, but we don't need to live there. We don't need to approach life from there. We can actually start to trust and surrender that everything's not a threat. There is good and possibility and trust. And that, for me, right, that's a real foundation of bioemotional healing. Because I'll tell you, I've had clients who have shame because they're like, you know what? I don't get it. Because I don't know if it was from you or what. As I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking, I've had clients who are like, I had a great birth. Like, I was able to not feel the pain. I was able to trust. But now in my everyday life, I can't do that. Like, they've got pain again. They've got more anxiety again. They have fear again. And so there's shame because they're like, wait, why I could do that then. And again, it's individual dependent, but with some of my clients, I'm like, well, there's a certain degree of planning and preparation for this time frame, but everyday life is so uncertain. It's so volatile. You don't know when this pain might end, right? There's at least like I'm going to do this and it's going to end. I can't be in labor for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
But now you're back in the throes of uncertainty of life, of what your kids are going to do, what your husband's going to do, what work is going to do. And that's just altered your nervous system again into that hyper vigilant state. And so, for the women out there who are struggling or may feel, I can do this in one area of the life, but the rest of my life, I can't do this. And why? That's where, this deeper process of really rewiring the deepest mechanisms of your nervous system in relationship to your life and your body, need to happen so that you can feel free and powerful and trusting in your life. That's not a shame thing. That is just how powerful the brain is depending on our life. And that's my main message is we have so many diagnoses with our mental health and our physical health. In fact, more than ever before. We're supposed to be healthier. We have more autoimmune diagnoses, more chronic pain diagnoses, more mental health diagnoses. And now it's like, this is who I am. I've been altered here. I'm defined by this. And I know that the driving force perpetuating many of our physical, mental, and emotional stress and symptoms and then diagnoses is being driven by this overly sensitive, hyper protective nervous system.
Mhm.
And until we change that, then yes, we're going to continue to struggle, notwithstanding all of our efforts. And regulating the nervous system has become very popular, and it is beautiful and important. But what I want to say is regulating is constant management. That is different than rewiring it.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that is what I do through bioemotional healing.
That's amazing. It's so healing and so beautiful. And what I'm just hearing you say is like there's always hope and you can rewire, you can change. And so for anyone listening to this, that maybe you have gone through some really traumatic, really difficult things, maybe motherhood or birth or other traumatic experiences has heightened your nervous system and put it on high alert, and you're dealing with symptoms or anxiety or depression or pain now, and maybe there's some women out there who you've just tried everything. I encourage you to look up Ashleigh. She is brilliant at what she does, and she does coach and have lots of resources. She has a free training on the brain. We'll put that link in the show notes, and she coaches women on her website at ashleighdilello.com. Ashleigh, where else can women find you if they want to find more about you?
Yes, my social media is always my name, Ashleigh Di Lello. I'm quite active. Well, I try to be on Instagram. My clients get the best of me. I'll just tell you that. You become a client, you get the best of me, and Instagram comes second. But on my website, ashleighdilello.com, yes, you can read more about bioemotional healing, all my client experiences. There's the free training on the brain. I also have a free download. I'm actually changing it right now. It will be the Brain Body Blueprint. It's a 3-step action plan to start to just shift your reactive response to stress, right? Whether that is in your mind or in your body, it starts to break it down. And that's a free download that is so effective. I'm sure you say it all the time. Sometimes we underestimate the effectiveness of something free, right? But like you say, sometimes I'm sure clients do that, or they're like, wait, I don't need your course. This worked for me, right? I've had people do that with this brain body blueprint. They're like, oh, this is enough. But for those of you like myself and my clients who have just had enough experiences to where the nervous system now is stuck, then you can schedule a free consultation from my website. Bioemotional healing is an in-depth 12-week process. So we have this free consultation to make sure it's a good fit, right, for both of us. It's very hands-on from me. But what I know is none of us have to be defined by what's already happened to us or what we've been stuck in. The mechanisms of the brain and nervous system are the same for each of us, which means it's the greatest equalizer to our potential.
Mm.
And I just want to hone that in because we're all so good. And I'm sure you've come across this yourself of saying people listening to your story and what is possible. And they're like, well, that's them, and this is me. And that
Yeah.
is why I love the brain so much, because I'm like, no, it's all of us.
All of
Unless
us. Yeah.
your brain is truly injured, right? To some areas where they don't work, they don't fire anymore. It is the equalizer of all of us. It's just really being taught
Yeah.
how to
It's the way we're made.
unlearn stress cycles it's stuck in
Hmm.
and access its power to create a new one, to really rewire it to be your greatest asset and for your mind body connection to just be powerful and to serve you. And no one's the exception. I've had an 84-year-old client, even. Those are some hardwired neural pathways. 84?
84
They've
years.
been there a long time.
Yes.
And even she was able to change and
Yeah.
shift
It's
patterns and
neuroplastic.
anxieties.
Hmm.
So that's the hope. So from my website, ashleighdilello.com, my social media, I do have a podcast. I got to get you on it, Karen. It's been
Oh, I'd
sitting for
love
a little
to.
bit. The bioemotional healing podcast, which we talk all about, these things and the different pieces connected to it. So reach out to me there and schedule that consult. Like what you do with women, what a beautiful gift, to reframe. Because I've worked with so many women with birth trauma. And so what a
Yeah.
beautiful gift for you to help so that doesn't have to happen,
Yeah.
right? Because it is altering and
It is
it's
altering. It's highly
so.
imprintable, the birth
Oh,
experience.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a vulnerable moment, which is
Yeah.
why the brain and nervous system anchor that experience all
Yes.
the more, right? And then you've
Yes.
got the baby there. It's just so impactful. So, what a gift that I just want to commend you for that you're
Mm.
doing and giving to women so that they can shift that beautiful, miraculous experience in their life and empowering them. And that is what, I'm trying to do on this end is just really say, we're powerful. Our lives, we don't just have to survive them and suffer
Yes.
and manage them, but notwithstanding all the crap you've been through, how much it's altered you, where you're stuck now, you are powerful. And the brain is your greatest asset, to do that and combined with faith or whatever that is for you. But the brain, the mechanisms are the same and you can change and you can get free to experience life and motherhood and your marriage or your career, like however you choose to want to. Like we're all capable of doing that. I am not the exception. And that's why just read through the clients and you'll see it's possible for anyone to truly live their life differently.
Mm. Amazing. Thank you, Ashley, for just spreading hope to people and showing them that they can heal, they can rewire, they can recover, they can find freedom in that and take back their power in their life. As someone who's done it twice or more than once, multiple times, it's really just you're just a beautiful example and a beacon of hope for people to follow and to defy the odds, no matter what obstacles they're facing. So, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your journey with us. And for anyone interested, all her contact info is going to be in the show notes. If you're not sure how to spell her name, we'll put that there for you so you can find it easily. And thank you for joining us today, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Hey, sister, have you listened to this last episode and thought that your body may be holding on to past trauma due to your previous birth experience? After your birth, have you had any thoughts like, I must have failed? Why was labor so painful? Why did my labor stall? Why didn't my body work? Or I felt like birth was happening to me. I felt so out of control. I froze. I just didn't know what to do. Or I knew something felt off, but I just couldn't speak up for myself. If you've experienced any of these thoughts, I want you to know one thing: you are not alone. Up to one third of women now say that they've experienced a traumatic birth, and that number is only getting higher. In order to deeply connect to your body and trust your body in labor, you have to release the trauma stored in your body. I created the Healing Birth Trauma course specifically for women like you. In this mini course, I lead you through a simple step by step process to understand the physiological blueprint in birth and identify exactly where your physiology was disrupted. You'll learn how to rewire the fear that was imprinted on your nervous system, and then you'll rewrite your birth story. And to go even deeper and allow your body to speak and release the fear, you'll learn how to do that through intentional somatic movement. You'll unravel the fear and unfreeze your nervous system so that you can enter your next birth free from fear. What would it feel like to finally feel safe in your own body? How would you feel if you knew your body was capable of birth? What kind of birth experience would you have with that kind of unshakable confidence? Why live in fear one more day? You too can heal, mama. You can release the fear and you can take back your power. If you're ready to release the trauma so that you don't bring it with you into your next birth, this course is for you. And today I'm offering you 30% off the Healing Birth Trauma course. Simply use the code TRAUMA at checkout. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pain-Free Birth Podcast. If you were encouraged, it would mean so much if you left us a 5-star review and shared this with your community. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at Pain-Free Birth. And to learn more about the Pain-Free Birth e-course, free resources, private coaching, and upcoming events, find out more at painfreebirth.com. See you next week.